want some? I got some.
Hey there, it's Jordan. We are live in the Detroit metro area in a backyard with a good old-fashioned United Auto Worker. Logan, who, for those of you that watched our strike coverage last year, we were on the picket lines for the first 3 weeks of the United Auto Workers strike. We were here in Michigan, we were in Ohio, we were in Illinois, we even went to Canada thinking there would be a strike there. Unfortunately, there wasn't, but
they were a little bit gun shy up there in Canada.
Always a fan of crossing the border. So, you know, we are, let's backtrack. If you've been paying attention, by the way, if you want to know what my shirt says, I can't read it. What does my shirt say?
Corporations do not care about you.
Corporations do not care about you.
Or your community.
Or your community. I wish I could sell this on StatusCoup.com, but alas, I got it in Portland, Oregon. But I figured some of you might ask, what's on my shirt?
That is a sick shirt.
So, I said, you know what? We got to cover the election. It's just unavoidable. However, I don't really want to go to Pennsylvania, to Michigan, Wisconsin, and ask people, what do you think of the polls? Who are you going to vote for? You know, the horse race, as they call it, because there's plenty of that shit going around. If you want to know the polls, if you want to know who people are voting for, if you want to hear all the, you know, shall we say, dry, gossipy, political nerd stuff,
theater,
turn on CNN, New York Times, whatever. But I said, you know what? I do want to go to these states. Unfortunately, even though we live in a country, it's only a couple states that actually matter in this election because of the undemocratic electoral college. And Pennsylvania is one of them. Michigan's one of them. Wisconsin's one of them. The very big swing states. So I said, let's go to these swing states and actually cover issues that are not really being covered by mainstream media. Let's cover issues that matter to voters, but are not reflected in the campaign coverage. So John and Jason Peters, he's an independent journalist. They were just in Pennsylvania the last few days covering important stories, including, did you know that Dimock, Pennsylvania has had toxic water due to the fossil fuckers for 14 years and their water is still bad? So they covered that. A couple other stories they covered that we'll be posting over the next week. But I wanted to come to Michigan, which is my second home. I've been here so often. By the way, if you haven't yet, get my book. Just came out, We the Poison, Exposing the Flint Water Cover-Up. It's available Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Just came out as an audio book, too. So it's on Audible and wherever else you could get your books, audio. But I said, let's come to Michigan. Plenty of stories to cover. And one of those is, even though United Auto Workers won the big historic strike last year, not every worker loved the strategy, but no one could argue they did make big gains. Unfortunately, one of the big three auto companies, meaning Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, one of them is not keeping their promises or breaking the contract. And there's various things that they are not following through on. So I figured, let's come talk to workers. We saw you on the picket line last year, and we're going to try and talk to other workers while we're here. But actually, earlier today, UAW President Shawn Fain and Bernie Sanders were in Illinois rallying folks, because part of what the United Auto Workers leadership and workers are upset about is in the contract that they won last year, Stellantis, well, you tell me, you're the worker, they did say they were going to reopen the Belvidere plant.
Yes.
Tell people the backstory of this Belvidere plant, because you are from Belvidere, Illinois.
Hey, I'm from Belvidere originally. I mean, the Belvidere plant, I think, has been open out there since about 1964. I mean, my father worked there for, 30 years. He just recently retired after being laid off. And in the lead up to the strike,
you had worked there too.
Yeah, I started out at Belvidere in 2017. I worked there for about a year, and I was laid off for a year and a half before I got to come out here to work at JNAP, where I work now. My father, he continued to work, because of his very high seniority right up until I think early 2022 when they did finally idle the plant. And as part of the contract and part of, numerous commitments that Stellantis made that they're now trying to walk back on, one of the major ones was to open a mega parts hub there, which would essentially consolidate some of the parts plants that they have in the Midwest into one location in Belvidere. They also were going to make plans to launch another vehicle out there, and I believe retool the plant. Really substantial investments into a community that has been devastated economically by this, major plant closure.
Right. So that's been a lot of the focus of why United Auto Workers is talking about possibly having another strike vote. They're not, at the moment, they're not striking, but right now it's kind of the lead up to a potential strike. But Belvidere, the Belvidere plant, which Stellantis is now backtracking, claiming, well, there's volatile market conditions.
The market's really bad, Jordan.
Right, which is part of the contract.
Yeah.
They're citing the market. What is the clause? The market conditions
yeah,
clause?
I believe the language is, I can't think of the exact language, but it says that provided the market is good, we'll do these things.
Right. So they're basically saying the market's bad, so bad that so far this year they've given $3 billion in stock buybacks. So that tells you how bad the market is for the company. But they're trying to backtrack out of this promise. And, the Sean Fain, UAW leadership is now doing a pressure campaign to get them, Stellantis, keep your promises.
Yes.
But it's not only that's not the only grievance workers have in terms of them not reopening the Belvidere plant. Tell me what else is going on that you see that them not kind of following through on.
Well, I mean, the second thing that affects me the most outside of Belvidere is where I work right now, JNAP, which builds the Durango, and there's been talk about moving the Durango, I believe to Windsor, really trying to play workers against each other.
Windsor, Canada.
In Canada, I believe. I believe where they used to produce the Pacifica. There's also, you look around Stellantis, and there's numerous local issues that go unaddressed. Mm-hmm. For example...
Oh, I'm sorry. I also buried the lead. I left out that they've already announced that they're going to lay off 2,500 workers in Michigan. So that's kind of important, too. Now, the contract that UAW won last year didn't, you can't mandate that they don't lay off workers, but obviously a historic contract, a historic strike. The UAW did win the right to strike as a result of plant closures, but it obviously is not in the spirit of the contract to be laying off 2,500 workers here in Michigan.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I believe that's just actually at Warren Truck.
Right.
Now, if you count my plant, the last 2 weeks, there's been 4,000 workers laid off there.
Wow.
And how much of a notice did we get? Well, we came in Monday and Tuesday. First shift came in on Wednesday. Second shift, which I work on, we got a robocall. And it said tonight was canceled. And we were like, all right. And then we got 3 more robocalls the next 3 days.
Can you take people into how this works? So you get a robocall. Do they tell you you're temporarily laid off? Do they tell you?
No, yeah. I'll go through this if it doesn't take too much time. So essentially what happened is we got a robocall telling us work was canceled for, each day we were getting a robocall. So we weren't told it was canceled for the whole week. So that was the first half week. And so we still got short work week pay for that since we worked that week. And then over that weekend, we were told that we were going to be put on temporary layoff. And I believe they just initially said 1 week, then that became 2 weeks. And now for me, it's 3 weeks because when we do go back, we're not going back both shifts. It's going to be 1 shift on, 1 shift off, each week.
And what is are they giving you a reason for this?
I think high inventory. I think there's also been parts problems. This is the thing. Not only does the Stellantis management have problems with the union, the dealers don't like what's going on. The parts suppliers aren't happy. I mean, even the shareholders aren't happy because, all this building inventory was kind of hidden from them while we were making these big profits. And now that's caught up with them, they're all finding this out now. So
basically, it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, management built more cars than there are demand for.
Exactly.
And because they built more cars than there are demand for, they're, instead of management having to cut their salaries or laying off management, they're laying off the workers who made that excess inventory.
Exactly.
So it's bad management, not bad workers.
Yeah. It's a classic capitalist crisis of overproduction in miniature. Because Ford, I mean, they're maybe not making like mega profits, but you've seen year over year their profits have been sustainable and good. But they aren't making mega profits like Stellantis was, but they're still profitable now. Mm-hmm. Same with GM. So it tells when you look and you see profits that are like record profits, and then all of a sudden your profits are like completely gone in a couple of years. That tells you that isn't market conditions. That is fundamentally bad management, because that means you're running a company in an unsustainable way.
Right. So I also want to bring people inside. And by the way, smash the like button, share this live stream. I'm also going to ask for you to throw us some dollars. Very expensive. We're going to be on the road by probably, when it's all said and done, for 10 days. So between food, gas, hotels, equipment, paying freelancers, this is going to cost us between $4,000 and $5,000. So if you want us to be able to still do this on the ground reporting, independent on the ground reporting, we need you. So sign up as a member, StatusCoup.com/join, $5 a month, or donate any amount. Small, big is appreciated, but any amount, StatusCoup.com/donate. But we were here exactly a year ago covering the strike, so the viewers might think, oh, okay, this is terrible because now you're on one shift, you're off another. How do you account for paying the bills? But also, yes, your pay did go up, but you also had to account for the money you lost during the strike.
Exactly.
So workers are still trying to catch up from the strike of last year.
Exactly.
Can you kind of describe that? Because some workers had to take out, mini loans or pick up other jobs. So even though you're getting paid more now, you're still catching up from last year.
Well, yeah, like I've spoke with some workers from Toledo kind of about the whole, keep the promise campaign and the possibility of a strike action. And a lot of them, like you just said, are tired. They feel like they just went out on strike. And, now they're not just going out on strike for like everybody in the, whole UAW. It's just over what, to a lot of people think it's just over Belvedere. So, there's kind of a disconnect with people on this. And like you said, people are still catching up on that because, like I told you before we started recording, while all of the, back pay you get and the signing bonus is great, loans have this really nagging thing called inflation. And if you have to take out a loan on short notice, you're probably going to have, or not inflation, excuse me, interest.
Yeah.
And if you take out a loan on short notice, you're probably going to have pretty high interest.
Yeah.
And, this was right before Christmas and stuff, too. So, it's not like this money was being spent to go right back to catch everybody up, Right. People had other stuff they had to spend money on. And, again, another thing, we supposedly got COLA last year, but, again...
Cost of living.
The cost of living adjustment, thank you. The company, I believe, can take back $1 of that every year from you. So that doesn't really keep up with inflation. And... Again, we're still behind. They call it a record contract, but I'm sorry, it's not. We're still behind where we were in 2008. We don't have pensions. What would solve this whole problem right now? The jobs bank. My dad was in the jobs bank before it got removed.
Explain to folks what that means.
It basically is like, hey, you're idled, you're laid off. Instead of sitting on your ass at home, why don't you do some community service? My dad got paid by Stellantis, or by Chrysler at that time, to work at my elementary school and help out. We could have auto workers in our communities helping out wherever there needs to be help. But instead, Stellantis would rather pay into the unemployment system and have the state, pay us out.
I also want to zero in on something. We'll get into the dynamics of UAW, but, this is made into a historic strike. Now you have presidential election campaign when it was Biden running. Biden stood with workers, even though it was essentially a photo op. I will give Biden that at least he stayed out of it. He did not, in the past, presidents would throw their body on the scale to try and demand that the auto workers and other workers just take a shitty deal. Biden, at the very least, based on having covered it, the White House was not heavy-handed. I will give them that, and they let the UAW, handle their own negotiations. But all of this is kind of a bumper sticker in a campaign, but we're basically less than a year since this agreement, and one of the auto companies is not honoring it, is laying off workers, is, padding their own stock buybacks, and I don't hear that on any bumper stickers for the campaign.
Yeah, no.
I don't hear Harris having to respond to, hey, if you guys are with the unions or whatever, why aren't you pushing for the PRO Act? The PRO Act would do a lot to stop things like this. Actually enforce penalties on corporations that do these bait and switches, because what we're talking about here is a bait and switch.
Yeah.
They agree, they sign the contract, but then they kind of find loopholes or language, market
well, they don't
conditions. Find
loopholes. They put loopholes into the contract, and the negotiators allow them to do that. I'm sorry. This is a big problem within the UAW, is the people we have negotiate these contracts on our side are often very myopic. They're not politically educated. They have a very pro-company view of things. They're bureaucrats through and through, a lot of them. A lot of them have either been, on the executive boards or on, the committees in these unions, or, even worse, in these things called joint programs where the union and the company work together on things. So, this is another problem, is that we just don't have people. The people who are supposed to be our political leadership within the union lack the political astuteness and analysis to understand that you cannot allow simple language like, as long as, or,
market conditions.
Exactly. Like you said, little loopholes. Like, when you see that, you have to say no. That language, this language has to be clear, cut, and dry.
But, also, I want to be fair, because obviously, Sean Fay and UAW leadership, it was the first of its kind. They had never gone on strike at the same time against all three companies. Now, I think it's fair for, you might have not loved the strategy. A lot of people wanted them to go out all at once. We were speaking before the interview. You would have liked a little bit more communication with the workers in terms of what their strategy and thinking was.
Let me clarify on that. I think there was communication. But yeah, I guess you were just about to say there wasn't communication on the strategy of what it was going to be. But even that, the problem isn't so much communicating the strategy. It's the workers had no input on what the strategy was going to be.
Gotcha.
The union bureaucrats aren't the ones who have to stand on the picket line. It's the workers who have to, the membership.
Right.
And they should be beholden to the membership. And, they need to give us the facts and tell us what they think's best. But at the end of the day, the membership needs to be the ones deciding the direction of the union.
But it seems to me, even when you're winning, which is historic contract, at least getting your pay somewhat like in the vicinity of levels of 2008, even though you're still not there. There is no actual enforcement mechanism to stop these companies from just mass layoffs, offshoring, and there's no enforcement mechanism because of much bigger issues than the United Auto Workers. We live in a capitalist hellscape.
Well, let me say what the issue is. The issue is the contract itself. The problem is that, while the contract does give the worker some very clear, laid out defenses, it also stops us from striking. What used to happen in the 30s, like really before they had the grievance procedure in these contracts, if there was an issue on the shop floor, people would just stop working. There wasn't, we're going to file a grievance, and then it'll go up to this, and then the next person, and then the next person. Meanwhile, it's taken 3 months to get your issue resolved, and you've had to continue to work through it. No, there would be a strike, like a limited strike, and they would stop work. But, the problem is really, this started with Walter Reuther, they just bought into the idea of a legal union, says just after World War II, there's this, really strong sense of, I would say, liberal patriotism, Reuther famously, or infamously, I should say, drummed out all the communists from the union. Anybody, anybody who had any kind of radical spirit, and it became a class collaborationist union. And
That's interesting, because at least for the UAW, Reuther is like revered.
Oh, Reuther is a god. You know, if they could bring Reuther back to life and put him on a golden throne like Warhammer 40K, they would do that, some of these people. I mean, I don't know if you can tell from my tone, but I think Reuther's a terrible, despicable person. He honestly set up the UAW for the, 50 years of decline that followed his death.
You think that because you think he was too conciliatory to...
To capital, number one, and number two, the bureaucratic, you could, maybe this might be in a bit of an extreme metaphor, but he essentially led a kind of Stalinist campaign to consolidate power within UAW.
Gotcha.
You heard me mention the AC, or Administration Caucus, before. He essentially formed that, and that turned UAW into like a one-party apparatus,
And that administrative caucus basically was the de facto power structure.
Yes.
Until
Sean Fain got
last
elected,
year,
yeah.
Because Sean Fain was part of the the UAWD.
Yeah, which is Unite All Workers for Democracy, which is the reform caucus that I'm also a member of.
I'm certainly not going to proclaim to be a UAW historian, but what I will say is, to me, I mean, every union, frankly, has issues, some worse than others. I mean, Clearly there's been corruption in the UAW and others. But here, I think one of the major problems is you basically have a one-party duopoly in this country. Forget the Republicans, because clearly they're not hiding that they hate unions.
Yeah, they're
but the Democrats, you got the Debbie Dingles and this and that who show up to union halls.
Oh my God.
In theory are pro-union, but they show up basically when there's strikes or when there's going to be a strike. But in the aftermath, which is now the year after this win, again, they're already basically taking a hammer to the agreement and laying off workers. They're, threatening, like you said, to send jobs to Canada.
Exactly.
Take that as a win. I guess not Mexico. I don't know. Yeah. But this leaves you guys and gals flying in the wind. Really?
Well, I mean, Gretchen Whitmer reached out to Stellantis to try to, I guess, have a meeting about keeping jobs here. Now, that sounds like a great thing on her part, but
after, by the way, politicians like Gretchen Whitmer have given them all sorts of tax breaks, goodies.
Exactly. But that's what she's going, when she says she's going to go talk to them, that's what she's saying she's going to go do, is she's not going to say, hey, we need to get this shit, in line and figure out what the hell's going on here. She's going, no, please, don't take your capital and flee the country with it. We need these jobs here. Please, we'll give you whatever tax breaks you need. It's, the power dynamic is completely, honestly, backwards. And you think about, Stellantis isn't an elected representative of anybody. They're just extracting wealth from everybody's communities, you know?
And also, for you, I mean, this has got to be you and your workers. You're getting robocalls or laid off, this and that. I mean, I assume you're living paycheck to paycheck. So
my money is really fucked up right now.
Yeah, so how, that's stressful, because how are you supposed to, you got to pay the rent, the electric, the auto, whatever, and you don't know how many days you're going to work. And now they're saying, oh, we're going to do one shift instead of two. So you're just back to this economic hamster wheel.
Well, exactly. It's like my rent went up $300 last month because, things are getting more expensive for everybody. And, I'm surprised it hadn't gone up since I've been out here. So there's that, the price of groceries seems to be ever increasing constantly. Like, I seriously, it's just me and my wife, and we can't get out of the grocery store getting decent food. I guess you could probably get out for cheaper if we bought, the shittiest food we could, but I don't know. I like to, treat myself with a little bit of dignity. But you can't get out of the grocery store for less than $200.
You got to feed that beautiful beard, too.
Exactly. Yeah. I got to keep that looking nice. But that's the thing. Just the cost of living is so much higher than it was 4 years ago. I mean, it's insane.
Let's get to the UAW here. Listen, I'll say it. I mean, I think Sean Fain was definitely, when you're coming from the bureaucratic sellouts before him, he was a big improvement.
Yeah.
Not everyone loves him. A lot of people loved his aggressiveness. Some workers aren't thrilled that the UAW endorsed Biden, or shall I say, has been pushing as hard for Biden. There's some who are, very involved with this Gaza issue. UAW has obviously come out for a ceasefire, but then, Fain was going around with Biden. Now the UAW is pushing hard for Harris. To me, that's neither here or there. Like, whatever you think politically, this is about the workers. But
I can say as a UAW member, it was despicable to see him stand up at the State of the Union and cheer on a president who was actively supporting a genocide.
Well,
I'll say that as a UAW worker.
Well, also, he blocked a railroad strike.
Exactly. He's not a pro-labor president.
Right.
So.
I think we have to raise the bar higher
Thank
than
you for
just
saying that, by the way.
I think you need to raise the bar higher than, he showed up on the picket line for 5 minutes.
Exactly.
That's great. But let's talk about now because, obviously, as I said at the start, Fain was with Bernie Sanders today in Belvedere rallying the troops. So that is a big issue that the leadership is focused on, that they are not keeping. Stellantis has not kept its promise to reopen that Belvedere plant. They are also talking about the stock buybacks that Stellantis has paid back $3 billion in stock buybacks already this year, and the fact that they're laying off these workers. So what is the dynamic now within UAW? Because UAW is talking about a strike authorization vote, but it seems like you don't know yet if that. It might pass, but it might not pass with like 90% of workers.
Yeah, and it's going to happen. It looks like the strike authorization votes are going to happen at different times at different locals. I don't know. I'll say it doesn't. People aren't.
We should just say for the viewer. You're straight up a Trotskyite. So.
Oh, we can say that for the viewer.
Oh. Okay.
No, that's okay. But yes, I am a Trotskyist, just to be clear. But, oh, wait, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
You said the strike vote's going to happen.
Yeah, the strike vote is going to happen, but it's probably going to happen at different places. And, I want to kind of touch on what you said about rallying the troops. Now, here's a big problem with a lot of the rallies that have happened, and I've been to 2 over the last couple weeks here. The first one I went to was almost all staff, but what I mean by staff is international staff at the UAW, not people from locals, not workers. These are like internal staff bureaucrats, basically. They were told they had to come to this rally at CashApp. It was, I think, last Thursday. Now it was them, and it was a bunch of activist workers. And what I mean by activist workers are people like myself who don't work at CashApp and who are going there to participate in the rally. Now, as far as people actually from CashApp, not a big turnout. The rally I went to on Wednesday, it was at Warren Stamping, I think, Local 869. They fit the entire group of people who showed up from 869 on the stage behind them, and the rest of the crowd was, again, staff and activist workers. So the problem is they're holding these rallies that aren't really rallying, getting people fired up like it's I don't know, it's a purely media strategy, because the meat that I really want to get to here is that the workers are not sold on striking right now. A lot of people, I was just on my locals Facebook group, and if you get on there, people are like, well, we're laid off right now, there's high inventory, why are we thinking about going on strike? That's only going to help the company. That might not be the correct analysis of the situation. I certainly don't think it is. But that is where the workers are at.
Meaning workers are saying it helps the company if we go on strike.
Yes, they think it's going to. A lot of people, I don't know if over 50% think this or what, but a sizable chunk of people think this.
Right.
Again, we mentioned Toledo earlier. When I talk to people from Toledo, they are, even people within UAWD who are activist workers are still like, I don't really know about going on strike, because you said there's some strike exhaustion. But this is a key thing I want to really kind of highlight in this discussion too. We are not discussing voting to go on strike. We are discussing having a vote to give International the ability to authorize a strike. Now, there's a key difference there, because I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look at the UAW Constitution probably to be sure. But once we give them that authorization, you know, the International can sit on it and do nothing. They can call a strike the next day. You know, there's a lot that could happen. You know, it's so.
And by the way, if it got to that point where the strike authorization vote happened and then UAW went on strike, based on last year, we don't know if it would be all locals at once, or it could just be, you know, a couple here and there and then escalating.
It probably wouldn't be all the Stellantis locals all at once because I believe, I would assume they would focus on the plants that have grievable issues. I'm not sure if they could call everybody out at once. Because this is another thing that kind of throws, I think, the average worker off at Stellantis when they look at this is, you look at last year, it is cut and dry, the legality of that strike. You know, there was no scaring workers about their position either in that strike.
Right.
You know, the economy, as far as auto was concerned, you know, they had just made record profits the last 2 years. You know, massive stock buybacks. You know, nobody was laid off. You know, I was working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day then. You know, and a lot of us were. And then really up until a couple months ago, that's how it was. You know, we were working 5 days a week, 9 hours a day still, with, you know, Saturdays, 2 out of every 3 weeks up until like July or something. So that's the thing, and that's what I'm trying to say now that I've rambled on for so long. There needs to be a lot more communication to the membership. Like, what we need to be doing as a union right now is having town halls at every local we can, just to discuss how people feel about this,
right,
and make the case to them, because going out to the media and doing this rah-rah bullshit, you know, it's great, but well, it loses its effectiveness if there's no teeth behind. You look at a paper tiger, you know?
Also, it seems like, you know, obviously the idea is solidarity for everyone, and what happens to you in Belvedere affects me and, you know, Warren or whatever, but if workers are rightfully exhausted from a strike that happened less than a year ago, I think it needs to be communicated to workers that this is not just about the Belvedere plant in Illinois, because it seems right now a lot of the messaging is about this plant in Illinois, that it is important that Stellantis is not keeping its promise, but like you said, you know, there might be workers in Toledo or elsewhere that just don't feel they could go on strike over a plant in Illinois. Yeah,
that is not only a messaging problem, but there's also a kind of a deeper structural problem within UAW there, at least a political structural problem that faces Shawn Fain. You know, like we mentioned kind of briefly before, Shawn Fain is a part of the Democratic Reform Caucus, UAWD. Now, UAWD is essentially only has leaders in position of power within the international, what's called the IEB, the International Executive Board. And that kind of group of people, of UAWD members, has kind of had a falling out over the last year. So that's a problem right there. And then...
So you're saying we're within UAWD or
within UAWD, the IEB members we elected within UAWD kind of had a falling out.
Got it.
Now, on top of that, the bigger structural problem is the local leadership is largely made up of administration caucus aligned people.
And administration caucus was the old guard, basically.
Yeah, that's.
And they don't like Fain because Fain and the UAWD came in, changed the way elections were held.
Yeah, it depends with them, because I could go on and on about the complexities, but that's kind of a basic version, a good way of putting it for the average viewer, I think.
Got it.
So, you know, like my president even, and also, you know, you're talking about solidarity. You know, my president, who's, again, an AC aligned guy at my Local 7, just at our last local meeting, he was talking about how he puts JNAP workers ahead of workers at Mac. You know, he said if, you know, it's got, because Mac essentially was built, it's across the street from the plant I work at, and it was built to handle overflow at my plant, but they've since started building like the Wagoneer and stuff over there. He's basically made it clear that, you know, if one of those plants is going to get shut down, it's going to be Mac.
Right.
Because it's, you know, us or, you know, a lot of these people, again, like I said, they're not very politically astute, these union leaders, and they have kind of a myopic, us or them kind of view of things. You know, they very much whipsaw the same way the workers do, you know, because they don't have a structural analysis of capitalism or the place of the union within it, you know.
So it sounds to me it's very important because a lot of the messaging is going through UAW's social media, you know, videos they're doing. There's a Shit Can Carlos campaign talking about Carlos Tavares, who's the probably billionaire Stellantis owner. So there's a lot of messaging outwardly, but you're saying there needs to be a lot better messaging and communication inwardly to workers, including, you know, town halls on why would we be going on strike so quickly? You know, can our jobs be threatened? Because Stellantis is huffing and puffing that this would not be a legal strike.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's really, I mean, my main criticism of the UAW as a whole. I mean, you know, I only want to make it sound like this is all like Sean Fain's problem or something, that he just happens to be the president. You know, it's just there needs to be more communication and discussion within, you know, the UAW, because it has a culture of bureaucracy that's been built up again through this, you know, reign of the administration caucus.
Yeah.
You know, like oftentimes when people bring problems at a union meeting, what the president will say, instead of, you know, like we had somebody suggest we create a committee to help with basically like health restrictions in the plant. They call them PQX restrictions. And the president just like shot that idea down and was like, no, just go talk to your union steward or your committee person or me.
Yeah.
And what that's saying is, no, the workers don't have the power. You got to come to me, the union official, to get things done. And, you know, this strike strategy, while it's coming from a more militant place, is still coming from that same kind of bureaucratic kind of top-down thinking where, you know, you're not building the workers up. Like I think I mentioned in, you know, the text message, you know, just to contrast the strike last year with what we're trying to do now. Last year, workers were already mobilized. They were mobilized by the market conditions, and, you know, by leadership, too, you know, in the lead-up to the strike.
And also 15 years of concessions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, there were a lot of, you know, people saw that they were in a good position to strike. But, you know, I think the leaders, they got a little confused because people were already mobilized, they were ready to be marshaled. So they confused the marshaling they were doing last year in the lead up to the strike with mobilization. And now they're trying to take that same approach where they marshal the workers into some activity through this, you know, media strategy. But the problem is you can't do that unless you mobilize the workers first.
Right.
And obviously, you know, after a big fight, what's happened? People get demobilized.
Yeah.
That happens in the military. It also happens in the unions, just in, you know, I guess a different, you know, a more psychological way, you could say.
And I'd like to ask you, not that the presidential election is really connected to this, but
I mean, we can talk about that.
UAW work. I mean, the auto industry is big in presidential elections. Trump, you know, pretends to be a union guy. He's not.
No.
Harris, I guess, is playing off of Biden's fake union act. I still boggles my mind how anyone thought Biden was pro-union. I will give him that the National Labor Relations Board under the Biden administration has been a lot better than previous administrations, but that's not saying much. The National Labor Relations Board also doesn't really have a lot of teeth to it.
Exactly.
They can't criminally go after these corporate union busters. And Biden never lifted a finger for the PRO Act, and I haven't heard that. Kamala Harris is not saying anything really about her pushing for the PRO Act. So I ask you, not that you could speak for all workers, but you just, to me, it's so empty. All these ads. I mean, in Pennsylvania, I saw the ads on TV, and here, democracy's on the line in the election. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of horrible things associated with Trump. There certainly is. But Kamala Harris gets elected, other than the historic aspect of it, I don't really see a lot of what we're talking about changing for the most part.
Yeah, no, I don't. I always tell people, you know, you can say this is the most important election of all time. I've heard that like the last 20 years of my life.
I've heard that since I started paying attention to politics.
Yeah, exactly. So, fine. But, and like you said, Trump is like really bad, but is he like a truly historical evil? I don't know about that. I mean, I honestly think he's kind of a cartoonish face on policies and politics we've already had, under Bush, and even under, Democrats seem to be excited to run to the right and try to enact some of those policies, so. And it is all empty, because, you mentioned I'm a Trotskyist. So, I mean, my analysis of the political system is this. Both the Democrats and the Republicans just represent two segments of capital. And, while it may be convenient for them to play to the workers when, labor is strong, they'll just as easily kick us to the side when labor is weak. So, and Kamala Harris, is supposedly a big friend of the worker, but even when you watch her political ads, all I hear talk about is small business people, the middle class. I'm sorry. I mean, I know a lot of...
You forgot the opportunity economy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we want to create economic opportunities for people to be entrepreneurs and this and that and the other thing, and it's... Well, we've had... I don't know what, basically since Carter, that's been the policy. And where has that gotten us? It seems like it's only made the country worse. So, and my thing is, I personally think even something like universal health care, that is completely out of the question given the political system we have right now. Even if we had, I think, a workers' party, it would take a damn near revolutionary movement to win stuff like that at this point.
I think a lot of people don't realize, and I don't even think I realized when I was covering the Bernie campaign, 2016 and 2020, and admittedly I was caught up by it. If Bernie won the presidency in 2020, I don't know if we'd have universal health care right now.
No, I don't think we would.
Not for lack of him trying. I certainly think he would have, but between, it being bogged down in the courts and a right-wing Supreme Court and money in politics, it could be overturned and stuck in courts,
Not to mention the incompetence he surrounded himself with, so.
But my point is, even if you have a fighter that shares your values, our system is so rotten and so corrupted by money, and then you add the courts.
Oh, it's not rotten or corrupted.
Oh, it's corrupted.
It is. It fundamentally operates that way. So this is I know corruption is a big narrative, but this is how it was meant to operate.
Yeah, but I think there's been a shift with the peeling back of regulations on money and politics.
Well, you're talking about the rolling back of the New Deal.
Yes.
But the New Deal
But also in the
was...
1970s, you started having these, Supreme Court decisions and, the Powell memo. I don't want to go too in the weeds, but, in the 50s and 60s, you did have a little bit more economic equality, not so much for black and brown people.
Well, what was that, though? That was imperial largesse.
No, but my point is, you didn't have CEOs making 300 times
the
work.
Yeah.
One parent could work.
That's also, too, that I think the kind of analysis that, let's say, the ruling class was making at that time was a bit different than the ruling class is making now. Because, like you just mentioned, the Powell memo is kind of the guiding.
I think, a lot of people say, Jordan, this isn't it. I actually think, as stupid as it sounds, that whole greed is good, Wall Street movie in the 1980s, I don't think that was just a movie. I think that was actually the zeitgeist.
No, it was.
And greed is good, and survival of the fittest, and I'm going to get mine. I think that started to take over everything from government to, corporate America.
But I just want to give a broader historical perspective, kind of thinking about this as an American, let's say. This isn't the first time this has happened.
Right.
Before, the New Deal, we had the Roaring '20s, and the Roaring '20s came out of the Gilded Age.
Right.
So this has all happened before. And again, this is something I always try to make a point of as far as foundationally for America. America has always been a state by and for speculators, landowners, and business people. You could add slave owners in there too, but unfortunately for them, the rest of the capitalist class didn't much care for them.
Right.
But again, those are the there was no election of congressional delegates, or of constitutional delegates to the Constitutional Convention. It was just a bunch of rich guys who got together and decided that they were the ones running the country and that they needed a constitution.
Right.
There wasn't any vote held, and even at that time, when you look at the way it was constituted, there were property requirements, slavery again, again, I really want people to think about the broader historical perspective. Like, that New Deal blip was just capital kind of thinking they could win people over with, not bread and circuses, but, you know, by keeping their tummies full, basically, and keeping things stable. But, you know, that just became untenable after a while.
I would be derelict without asking you, has conditions in the plants gotten any better? Because when I was on the picket line, I was hearing horror stories, you know. People would be passing out on the assembly line, and, you know, the bosses would say, keep going. You know, floods in the warehouse, workers would be managers say, keep going. Has, you know, the day-to-day dynamics changed at all?
I mean, I don't really think so. Like, one of my favorite examples of how it maybe is getting a little worse is, you know, with all the cost cutting that's going on, a big part of that is a push to, you know, try to increase efficiency on the shop floor, and what that amounts to is making my job harder.
Do more with less.
Exactly. So what they did on the door line is they cut 8 job stations. The door line is mirrored, so, you know, because we got it right on the left side of the car. You know, so they eliminated 8 job stations. Now there's 2 shifts. So that's 16 jobs that got eliminated over 2 shifts. And, you know, the job elements at those 8 job stations, like you said, those are all spread out now to everybody else on the door line. And, you know, you might have had, you know, a few extra seconds to kind of get a little reprieve, you know, during your job, but now that's gone because you have to do this extra little task, you know. Right. And a lot of the times, you know, the people, I mean, all the time, the people making that decision to add something onto your job, they're not doing that job. They don't know how much time you really have. They don't know. You can tell them until you're red in the face that this is going to fuck my job up, and make it so I can't do my job. And, you know, you'll just have to get in the hole and struggle for them to actually realizing that this isn't going to work.
At the end of the day, the same thing keeps popping up in this discussion. You want a historic contract in many ways, but the same dynamic is still in play. They're laying people off. There's very little protections for workers, and you know, now the only difference is you're not going to wait 4 years to strike.
Exactly.
There's potentially, you know, striking sooner,
yeah.
But the contract win. And I can't put this all on Sean Fain because this is the system, but
it's the
contract win did not safeguard the workers.
Yeah. Well, you have to this is why it's what is your analysis of the union? Mm-hmm. What purpose does the union serve the working class? Now, me as somebody from the Marxist tradition, I think unions are purely defensive organs of the working class. You can't achieve revolutionary ends with unions. At the most you can do, again, is win back a little bit from what the capitalists have taken from you. Mm-hmm. And, again, use this organized labor as a means to further organize the working class. Mm-hmm. The only solution to address these problems is a working class party. Now, obviously, I'd like to see a working class party that's more in the Bolshevik tradition. But, you know, honestly, even if the DSA, you know, decided to put together like an independent workers' party, as reformist as I think that project would probably be, I would still participate in it because it would actually be meaningful political independence for the worker.
So to me, from what I'm hearing from you, you probably would co-sign some type of general strike in 2028 because we know Fain was talking about trying to line up different industries at the same time. To go on strike, you know, May Day kind of thing, 2028. But I think enough of this staggered striking, everybody at once, you know, and not, you know, getting pensions back, you know, really hardball for as long as it takes.
Yeah. I mean, the way I view it is I think, I don't know how familiar you are with the Russian Revolution, but I think that 2828, if we really wanted it to be, could be a kind of 1905 moment for America.
Tell people what that means.
Well, in 1905, it's often called the dress rehearsal to the famous 1917 revolution, because it was it was the first kind of break in Russia. It was a revolution that didn't, throw the Tsar out, but it kind of degraded his power a little bit. They brought in some kind of meaningless liberal reforms to the Tsarist system, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the Tsar was still powerful. But what really came out of that were the Soviets. That's where the whole Soviet strategy came out of, and what Soviet means in Russian, just for everybody, it just means council or like committee, basically. So these workers' committees were set up countrywide, in 1905, and, while the workers didn't win in 1905, it taught them, they learned a lot of lessons from it that they were able to apply in 1917 when they reintroduced the Soviets,
Mm-hmm.
and, that eventually led to the, famous Bolshevik slogan, all power to the Soviets, because the Soviets became real institutions of dual power that were able to govern the country, and fundamentally that's what we get. That's what
Be careful. Some of the neoliberals are going to call you a Russian agent.
No, they might. Jesus Christ. Don't worry, I'm not a big fan of Putin either, but I'm not a big fan of Ukraine.
My last question, we are in Michigan, not that you can speak, but I don't like listening to political pundits, mostly white.
I am running for office myself.
Oh, I didn't know that. We'll talk about it. Mostly white, wealthy pundits on the set of CNN and MSNBC who don't actually know what they're talking about. What vibes are you getting in Michigan? Because I've looked at a lot of these polls that have Harris up by 3 or 4 points, and I scratch my head because that's not what I'm hearing from people who kind of know the pulse in Michigan.
Well, I
was also in Dearborn. You have the Gaza issue. You also have, I don't think it's a small percentage of black men in particular, in Detroit in particular, that for whatever reason seem to be gravitating towards Trump. So I think it's going to be incredibly close here, and it would not surprise me if Trump won.
I don't know if Trump's going to win, but it's probably going to be closer than they're expecting, because I think Arab populations are going to vote. I know, I work with a lot of, Arabs, I guess relative to everywhere else, and a lot of the people I know, like, one of my coworkers, Hussein, he's told me him and his family, they're from Yemen. They plan to vote, uncommitted, or just not vote for the president if, that's what it comes down to. And he's told me they vote. They make sure to get out and vote. So
yeah,
and they're going to get out and they're not going to vote for the Democrats. I don't think they're going to vote for Republicans, but
a lot of them voting for Jill Stein.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like I mentioned, I'm running for office. I'm running. Party I'm running for a working class party. We're only running in statewide offices, so
What office are you running for?
I'm running for District 8 state representative in Michigan. Might have to get you a flyer before you leave here, and you guys can take a look at that.
Got it.
But yeah, I think the Democrats. I don't know. My own personal analysis is that the Democrats are probably going to win this election because. I really think the main reason Trump was able to win in 2016, despite his, just the awful, off-putting personality, even to people, I think a lot of people that voted for him still felt that way, was the fact that you could make the case that he was a political insider.
Outsider.
Thank you. Yeah, outsider. Because, what is he now? For the last 8 years, he's been the de facto leader of the Republican Party.
Right.
And the face of the Republican Party in America. So he is the farthest thing from a political outsider now. Like, he's fully enmeshed within that party. Like, they've accepted him as their, like Godhead, basically. So, I don't think... number one, I think turnout's going to be lower than it's probably been, even in 2020, and I think the people that do get out and vote are just going to be voting against Trump or voting against Kamala.
Got it.
That's really, I don't think there's any
my
positive
assessment
analysis.
is it's right now basically a toss-up.
I think that's probably, honestly, I think Kamala Harris is going to win it, but, I wouldn't put money on it. I think saying it's a toss-up is probably...
Right. And I think also what
better analysis.
A lot of people are not taking into account, Dearborn has gotten a lot of the attention in terms of it's the largest Arab American population. But there's actually a decent Arab American population in places like Flint. There's
Hamtramck.
There's also a lot of Lebanese Americans throughout Michigan.
No, I got to mention Hamtramck. The mayor of Hamtramck is a Democrat,
right,
and an Arab. Mm-hmm. He's a very conservative Arab, I'll say. But he's come out and said, for Trump. So.
Right. But there's also a lot of Lebanese Americans throughout Michigan. And
Yeah, I work with a Lebanese woman who works on the door line right across from
and
me.
you
Actually.
see right now, Israel's, bombing Beirut and all of that. So, I don't think Gaza is the only issue in Michigan, but you couple in Hillary Clinton lost Michigan, and besides that she's terrible, she underperformed among black voters, particularly in Detroit.
Yeah.
So if Kamala Harris underperforms, they're saying black men under 50 is what they're saying. Then the Arab population, and then there's enough, independent voters here or there.
Well, here's what I'll say, and I'll tell viewers, don't put too much into what I'm saying here. As I am a white guy, just work as a white guy who works in a majority black workspace. I don't think there is that many dudes who are black guys who are gung ho for Trump. There are like the more kind of, you could say the guys who are caught up in hustle culture or, this entrepreneurial mindset who do support Trump. And I do know a few black people who support Trump, but I don't think that's the vast majority of them.
No, I don't say majority, but
you think like a plurality?
From what I'm hearing, it's there's more black men shifting to Trump. Not a majority, but enough that her numbers wouldn't be as
fair
strong.
enough. Yeah. That's the thing. I don't know if it's going to really affect her numbers too much, but I don't know. Because if you go, I don't know if you saw the gas station up there on 8 Mile and Livernois, there is a big Kamala Harris 2024 shirt seller guy out there. And I always see people walking up and buying shirts. So,
gotcha.
Here's what I'll say I've noticed amongst, again, I feel this isn't my place to really speak on this, but the vibe I get is that older black people are going to vote for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
They're very solidly pro-Kamala Harris. Younger black people are about as politically motivated as any young person out there. I said this kind of cohort you're talking about, the middle-aged black guy. I don't know that that's like a big enough cohort, because a lot of those guys might not even vote. But not to get too caught up on that.
It's about geography. For a Democrat to win in Michigan, you got to do
That's
very
a good
well
point.
in Detroit
Yeah.
and Wayne County.
Exactly.
So Detroit, you have Democrats, not just president, Senate, Congress. You really need to run up the numbers in Detroit. So that's
not just Detroit and Wayne County, really Wayne, Oakland, and I think there's one other county that Macomb, yeah, because I believe just in those 3 counties, that's over half the population of the whole state. So yeah, that's a good point as far from what's the word I'm looking for here? You said geographic perspective on it. So I'm not a political pundit. I'm just some dude. But that's
before we wrap, what would you like the audience to know? Because we could be looking. This could advance real quickly, and you could be looking 3-4 weeks at, strike authorization votes and all that. So, what are they not getting from what they're seeing in the media and social media and whatever?
Well, I mean, what I would say to the audience is, keep an eye on this. Again, we might not actually end up going to strike. We very well could go to strike. If you know of UAW locals in your area, even if you're not a UAW member, reach out to them and ask them if there's any way you can, I don't know, maybe donate to a pantry or something. Any way you can help out. And also, if we do go on strike, show up to the picket line. I really think that was a great thing we did last year, is we told people to show up to the picket line and support us. And don't come to the picket line and cause trouble, obviously. Yeah. But if you want to come out and hold a sign and help, I think that's great. That's what we need, people to do that. Absolutely. And if you don't mind me plugging the Working Class Party, I'm also running for State House in Michigan for District 8 for the Working Class Party. If you look up the Working Class Party online, you should be able to find our program. We're also running candidates in California, Maryland, and Illinois. In the Chicago, I think it's going to be in Chicago, LA, and in the Baltimore area, of course. But we got most of our candidates concentrated in Michigan. We have statewide candidates. We're not running anybody for president, so, I don't know how many viewers are diehard Kamala Harris supporters here, but if that's a big problem for you, you can still vote for Kamala Harris and still vote for the Working Class Party.
Got it.
And, just again to add on to that, if we want to, end the capitalist cycle of boom and bust, we need a working class party. Absolutely.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, George, for the opportunity.
Public service announcements. We're in the early days of this three-state swing state trip It is a lot. My body's already broken down, and I'm only on day 2. What did we? I think I drove to get you in Pennsylvania. That was 3 hours. No, yeah, 3 hours. And then we drove yesterday, today, about 6. Would you say? Yeah. So it's a lot of driving, a lot of poor eating.
It's harder on your body than people think.
Yeah, driving. I'm 2 back surgeries in, so
Yeah,
it's very hard. We had to stop for CBD lotion because I actually have a pinched nerve in my shoulder now, which is going into my arm. So I'm lathering myself up with CBD lotion. I said to John, "Is it okay if you maybe apply this to areas I can, or is that, consensual, of course?" He didn't. I'm doing it. Don't worry. To all those out there. But tomorrow we're going to be in Detroit, kind of floating around, covering different stories. I have text messages going with about 17 people, so I don't particularly know everything we're going to be covering. But, there's a lot of issues with transportation here, and a lot of residents think it's intentional in order to get black people to leave Detroit so they could further gentrify. Actually, public transportation only works on time 65% of the time, which is one of the worst rates in the country.
Well, look at the People Mover downtown. People often get on the People Mover, which is supposed to be for mass transit, and just ride it around in a loop like it's an exhibit.
There you go. Also, there's a rally going on that we might check out. Might go try to talk to more Stellantis workers at shift change. And then there's actually there is a strike going on with the aerospace workers, and that strike is going on. That's in Jackson, Michigan, which is about an hour from here. That strike's been going on now, I believe, for 2.5, 3 weeks. Not getting a lot of attention, so I'm going to go talk to one of the local union bosses there. So there's a lot going on, and these issues, they're not the sexy issues that are discussed on CNN. Mm-hmm. They're not the issues that campaign reporters talk about, but these are kind of issues that are important to the actual voters in these swing states. So we want to highlight those stories. Again, it's expensive to do this kind of reporting. This is, I don't know, I'm losing count, but probably my 24th or 25th time to Michigan over the last decade. It's, I guess, my second home. Yeah. But critical swing state. And we're also looking for stories in Wisconsin, which will be the next state. So if you're in Wisconsin, you got a interesting story you think we should cover. We can't get to everybody, can't get everywhere, but we'll do our best. But please, I'm not beyond begging. We need your support. Preferably sign up right now, tonight, as a Status Coup member. Do you see a lot of other media outlets doing this? I do not. I see a lot of media outlets pontificating and blowing smoke out of their assholes. I don't see a lot of other outlets, corporate or independent, out there on the ground consistently giving the microphone back to the people. So all I need from you is 16 cents a day. That's $5 a month. You could also sign up at $10 a month. That's 33 cents a day. We have $20 a month. You could become a member. You could sign up annually. So go to statuscoup.com/join. We have to at least break even on these trips. And these trips cost anywhere between $4 and $5 grand between food, hotel, gas, equipment, paying freelancers. So please sign up. If you're already a member and you can help, if you can't, I understand. But if you can, you could donate to this trip. Everything matters, even if it's $5, but sometimes, John could tell you, I'm sitting there in fetal position in the car. Holy shit, we're spending all this money and we're going to lose all this money because we don't have any corporate funding. And then some angel donates like $1,000. So small amounts matter. Big amounts obviously matter more. But anything you can do to donate. I believe actions speak louder than words. We don't have some fancy slogan about being the media revolution and then sit in the studio and just follow what's trending on Twitter. We show you by going out there and covering. And I'm burning the fuck out too. So we need to grow because I need to hire another reporter. I cannot do this on my own. I'm not getting any younger. I'm 38 and I'm 2 back surgeries in. We got to hire more reporters. We got to hire another producer. So please sign up and donate. statuscoup.com/join. statuscoup.com/donate. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh yeah, I'll read the super chats. Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, you cannot forget the super
Can't forget. $50 CB. Keep up the good work, everyone. You're the man, Jordan. Thank you so much, CB. Sumner Stilling. I don't know if I said that right. $10. I am effing poor, done paying for the genocide, proxy war in Ukraine. Gah! Free us all. 80 plus cop cities being built right now. LOL, USA of Nahism. We were on the ground in Atlanta twice covering cop cities. I actually think we should just change the name of the country to the United Sacrifice Zones, because that's what we are. The Smith Elvis, €10. Solidarity from Ireland to my union brothers and sisters in the UAW. Status Coup, keeping it real, covering on the ground, important working class issues. Love you in Ireland. I've been trying to get my wife to go there, but she doesn't drink, and that's all I would do, basically. Not that there's, it's a beautiful country. There's more to do than drink, but
solidarity, man. Thank you.
Brenda, $5. About halfway through the audiobook and own the hardcover also. You got both? Wow, Brenda, thank you so much for helping put my child through college. She got the hardcover and audiobook. Did you get my book? Don't lie.
Not yet.
Well, you're out of work, so I'll allow it. But everybody else, get my book, We the Poisoned, Exposing the Flint Water Cover-Up. I love it, even though it is an infuriating story. Thank you for your tireless work. Thank the audience. I would have never been able to gather the information and break the news, break the stories I did without Status Coup's audience sending me to Flint. I've been there 21 times, believe it or not.
Wow.
Most of which was with Status Coup. New YouTube member Eric signed up. New member Jad. So those are 2 new members. Thank you to the new members. By the way, if you don't know, signing up as a Status Coup member, not only are you supporting this work, but we also do monthly members calls. I am slacking on that because I've been a little busy promoting a book and a lot of other stuff. But we do monthly members calls through a program like Zoom. So that's always a good time. We go about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We do behind-the-scenes videos from the road. So we've already posted for members a couple behind-the-scenes videos from this trip. So go to StatusCoupMember.com if you're a member for those behind-the-scenes members videos. If you're a YouTube member, you get it on the YouTube YouTube community tab, I believe. I'm exhausted just saying all that. So thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the membership.